So right before New Year's, a friend of mine posted in one of his Facebook updates, which is how I get all information, literature, and inspiration. And he mentioned that patience was one of his goals for the new year. And for some reason, it really struck me because I don't consider patience to be a grand trait. In fact, I often thought of patience as being in the same category as, table manners or driving etiquette. It's kind of a politeness thing. I don't know. It just it didn't feel like a grand thing. And maybe because I was almost afraid of patience. I know that if you ask for patience from the universe, you generally are not granted patience with a magic wand. You are given tasks that stretch you and force you to learn patience. And I am in no rush to be challenged in that way. But reading it this time, it really struck me as that is significant. Massively significant. Significant in the same way that I think gratitude, I consider gratitude to be a foundation block of all my belief system. And I think that I'm moving into a place where patience is equally as important. The last decade, was very much governed by love more, fear less. And then this decade has really been governed by float more, steer less. And a big part of floating and learning is about patience. Because patience is what is required to allow the universe to do things on its own, to solve its problems on its own, to find the balance of things on its own. As human beings, we very much get caught in the trap of being human doings. We lose track of the ongoing pace and patterns and harmony of everything and feel very much like we know what's best and we need to make things happen. And we get so caught up in the doing, the achievement, the productivity, that we almost think that if we don't do, everything falls apart. You've probably known people or been one of those people who feels like if you miss a week of work, the whole place is going to fall apart. And I think sometimes people feel that way about their whole lives, that if they relax for a second, it will all fall apart. And while it's true, there may be some things that don't get done. I think the goal is surrendering somewhat so that things get done, but not from a doing perspective, but more from a floating and one thing at a time perspective. I'm not sure if that makes sense. I can remember being when I was traveling through Europe when I was in college. I was 21 or 22 and spent 4 months traveling. During that time, I made 2 calls home. One in the middle of my trip and one call right before I left so to make sure that someone would be able to pick me up from the airport. There was no internet. I sent postcards but didn't receive any mail. So for 4 months, I had no communication. I had books and sitting and writing and talking with people that were around me. And I think it's kind of tragic that experience is almost impossible now. It is very difficult to find a place that you don't have an internet cafe to check in. But that's a side product of the patience thing. I was thinking about this morning. I remember sitting and being told that a Turkish bus was going to be between 3 and 5 hours late. And I just sat down. And I think, how long would I be able to sit down now before whipping out my phone and checking on things or filling my head? I now am in a practice where I am trying. My current practice is 5 minutes of meditation a day. 5 minutes of not thinking about something, not trying to make a plan, not to do anything, but just 5 minutes of simply allowing the world to go by. Allowing my thoughts to come back to just being present. And 5 minutes that's been my goal for the last 3 months as I've been doing this. That's as far as I can stretch. That is the extent of my patience and stillness. But I'm starting to see this meditation not as a, I'll get better at this and then reach nirvana, but more as a practice of patience, a practice of being present, a practice of pulling out of that feeling of need to do, need to fix, need to be productive, and a practice of simply being, and then allowing whatever faith or things to come. And sometimes ideas will come and try to come back to center, and have faith that I can pick them up later. I used to have a real hard time sleeping because I would, have an idea at night and then think, I gotta remember that in the morning, gotta remember that in the morning, gotta remember that in the morning. And then that was solved by a pad of paper on the side of the bed. And sometimes I think, is it unfair to do that in meditation? Can you stop meditation and write a note so that you can let go of a thought? I don't know. Of course, I'm not sure if I would trust any rules about meditation. I'd tell you that I have been extremely liberated by thinking about meditation not as a path to get someplace, but as a practice of mindfulness that I have noticed has affected the rest of my life in that I'm becoming more and more aware of how frequently I'm not present. Originally, the theme of the topic of this show is going to be patience, presence, and purpose. Because I think that is a path of that you can kind of go that direction. That with patience, you can get to a place where you can be present. That if you're impatient, then you are living not in the now moment. You are living in a story of what's going to happen, or what you need to do, or a potential future. But when you can be patient, you can simply be in that moment and have a clarity and a focus. Keep in mind, I'm talking like 5 minutes is a challenge. So how much of my life passes by while I'm not there? A huge amount of it. And I'm actually actively trying and practicing. So I wonder how much of our culture's lives pass by as they are in future stories, as they are thinking about past regrets. That, I think, is the big tragedy of humanity. And I think we often get tricked into thinking that a less doing, of a more waiting, patient, floating stance is the same thing as laziness. And I would argue that there's a difference between being patient and not doing and being inactive. Byron Katie's big thing, and she wrote Loving What Is, and her big thing in this topic is you just do one thing at a time. You do what the task at hand is. My dad's advice when I was growing up was never touch a piece of paper twice. So if you pick something up and it has a task to it, you do the task. As opposed to going, oh yes, this is something I need to do. And now it's taking up cycles of your brain of, don't forget to do that someday. Don't forget to do that someday. No matter how far back in your brain it is, don't forget to do that someday. Don't forget to do that someday. And that's related to, if you want a very specific organizational technique of that, Getting Things Done is a great book that talks about how finding ways to touch paper once, or in his version a couple of times so that you file it in certain ways. It's a great way. But the key for me at this stage, at starting this new year in patience, is in recognizing that there are the patterns and the actions and the flow that matters is not something that I'm making happen with my mind. The things that matter are far bigger than I can understand from my human vantage point. I just had a New Year's Eve kind of meditative ceremony that I was a part of, and afterwards people shared their experiences. And one person, this was, man, patience has just been coming up so much recently, from bumper stickers to songs to then this person shared about patience, and their comment was, I kind of a reminder to themselves to practice patience so that they could sit with a task, and in doing so allow themselves to create greatness and great things, as opposed to trying to make something happen and having an attachment to a due date or a finishing, but simply sitting with an idea or an inspiration and letting his creativity take it to a place that he could not, with his ego mind, could not make happen on his own. And that's something I really struggle with. I generally don't write things that I can't finish in one sitting. I don't do any art that I can't do in one sitting. And in fact, the way that I got over my I'm going to write a book challenge that I had for 20 years was I made it a collection of essays, most of which I wrote in one sitting. So this is a huge growth opportunity, I think, for everyone. It requires faith, and it requires challenging some of the very deep built-in values of productivity. I know that myself, when I fall into a funk or a depression, it is almost always triggered by a lack of productivity, by not doing enough things. And if I feel good, it's often because I've done something or completed something, and I have something, I put up a new website, I wrote something, that makes me feel good. And there's nothing wrong with that, feeling good from that, but I recognize that that's a dangerous way to have to always be working to be happy. It's like flying a kite on a windless day. It's only in the air if you're running. You need to be able to find a way, be patient for the wind to come so that you can relax and have the kite fly. So, another patient thing that's come up to me recently, last year I was invited to do HUgNation in an art gallery, and had an experience where there was a bunch of people that were in the gallery that they kind of called in off the streets and everything, and I found myself just rushing to try to impress people and make sure they understood things and it was one of the least successful, least connecting HUgNations that I've ever done. And not that I've done a lot live, but I wanted to do more live, and then I had this live one and it really went poorly. And in thinking about what went wrong with it, it was that I lacked patience. I lacked faith that if I simply allowed things to happen, that it would connect in the way that it should. I was so concerned with making it work and getting to the point, and that I poisoned the spell. And so since then, I've had a few more live ones where I've tried to really focus on being patient, really focus on being present, and focus on my job in every moment and in every task and in everything that I want to commit to is to be present first. And if I can be present and have faith, then I think that's what allows me to have patience. And if people are there and are tapping their feet and I'm not going fast enough, well then this is the wrong experience for them at this time. And so in the chat room, and over years, I've kind of feel like we've developed a certain amount of bond and reputation and history. So I know that I don't have to earn your trust that I'll get to the point or be entertaining, which is a wonderful luxury that allows me to really sink into a place of patience. And I need to practice having that patience in every place of my life, both in external projects as well as internal projects. There's a couple quotes about patience that people shared before we went going that I just wanted to get in here that were just so awesome. Patience is the companion of wisdom, from St. Augustine. Tolstoy said, "The two most powerful warriors are patience and time." Buddha said, "The greatest prayer is patience." And there was a great one by Waldo Emerson that someone just posted that seems to really, he said, oh goodness. Well, I don't know exactly where it is, but it was something about patience and being the timing allows you to see the timing of nature or the universe or something like that. Please don't quote me on that. But I think that is, to me, one of the things that I'm also trying to learn in my personal patience is surrendering more to seeing the timing of the universe unfolding, seeing, having faith that things will happen as they should, having faith that even saying that things will happen as they should could mean that I feel drawn or energized to do something, which is much different than feeling pulled to do something or pushed to doing something from an external place. Having patience that when the timing is right, I will feel drawn to do something. And as we begin 2011, maybe we can all practice a little patience towards ourselves and all those that we encounter.
You only live once. Enjoy the color.